We got a bidet! Hey everybody, and welcome back for another video. In today's video, we are talking about the brand new show, Star Wars Kenobi, on Disney Plus. We were treated to 2 episodes this past Friday. Oddly enough, we got it a little bit early, so if you got to stay up and watch it, I think it was Thursday night, that was awesome. I was, working on video stuff and happened to see the post that said releasing early at midnight, and I was like, oh my goodness, because usually we'd have to wait till like 3 a.m. if we wanted to stay up and watch it. So we got some exciting stuff from the 2 episodes, so we're going to go ahead, we're going to cover both of those, kind of give a brief overview of what's happening between the 2 and some of the big key moments, and then give you some of our thoughts, and then wrap it up. So like I said, we got the first 2 episodes. The first episode of Kenobi pretty much just set the stage of who we're going to be interacting with this show and what they're about. They did a great job of setting the foundation. Also, if you haven't seen the Star Wars stuff leading up to this show, there's a pretty cool montage in the beginning that gives you a good background of who Kenobi is and what he's been through. Also Anakin, because Vader's going to be a big part of this as well. So after the little montage, we roll into probably something that's probably one of the more big, curious type things that we've all been able to get little tidbits of from Disney, and that's Order 66. Everything seems pretty normal at first with some Jedi training, and then it all just hits the fan, so to speak. The clone troopers come in to try to kill the children and the master, and eventually, we just see a bunch of Jedi being killed, but these younglings, the group, make it out. And there's a little bit of a focus on one of them, and we'll talk about what's going on there in a little bit. But that's how we open the show, and then the rest of episode 1, like I said, really sets the groundwork for the characters. We see what has Kenobi been up to all these years, because this takes place 10 years after Revenge of the Sith. He works at a meat factory that's outside, so to speak. Lives in a little cave. He does not have his normal house yet. He checks in on Luke every now and then, just kind of looking after him. We get to see a little bit of Princess Leia as a child. We get to see her on Alderaan, which is really cool. And we got Bail Organa coming back, the original actor, so that's really neat to see. I'm glad they got him on board. And I believe the other big characters that were in episode 1 were the Inquisitors. I know at first, when we first saw the trailers, the Grand Inquisitor was a big question mark for us, but they cleared it up right away, that he will have yellow eyes in this show, which is great. His teeth are a little gnarly. I think a couple of the Inquisitors actually have some gnarly teeth. And we get the Grand Inquisitor. I think it's the 5th brother. I forget what number he is. But we get one of the brothers in there. And then we get this new Inquisitor, Reva, one of the 2.
I think she's the 3rd sister.
Yeah, she seems to be what the focus is on the Inquisitors. And we see some, really good character development for these characters. We see that our 3rd sister is a bit more aggressive than the others. She has a point to prove. And I think that's going to lead to some other things down the road. It's said by the Jedi, when you give in to these big things that it ultimately leads to suffering, and that's what we saw with Anakin. So, maybe that's kind of a foreshadow for her. Don't know. But what kind of propels us into the actual series is that the third sister wants to draw out Kenobi, and by to do that, she hires a group of pirates to kidnap Leia, and then Kenobi is asked by Bail and his wife to rescue Leia. And really, for the most part, that is episode 1. The other big thing from episode 1 is that there is another Jedi on Tatooine that is kind of in hiding, and he goes to ask Kenobi for help, and Kenobi basically tells them no, like, just go into hiding and live your life. And then we see that guy strung up in the streets not too long later, implying that he was killed. We'll talk a little bit more about that stuff after we get done with the recap. But that's about episode 1. Anything that I missed on that one, Sarah? That should be.
I don't think so. Those are pretty much all the big key points. There was one, I guess, one other minor thing that might be worth mentioning, which was when the Inquisitors were trying to find that Jedi, they didn't know Kenobi was there, and they were trying to interview the citizens, and so Owen was one of the ones that almost got killed because Reva could tell that he knew something, not knowing that it was about Kenobi instead of the Jedi they were actually after. And they get distracted and do something else instead, so he doesn't actually get killed, but he didn't out Ben, even though his life was at stake. And so it was kind of just a really big bonding, understanding moment, I guess, between those two.
Even though he seems to really hate Kenobi.
Mm-hmm.
Because it seems like Owen believes that Ben only wants Luke to be able to train him in the ways of the Force. He doesn't really care about him, just cares that he could be, the rebirth of the Jedi. So they kind of have that dynamic going on. And we can kind of, see later on in episode 4 of Star Wars, A New Hope, that Owen even tells Luke that Ben is dead. So, there is that dynamic of, not wanting Luke to know who he is, kind of a thing.
And this kind of ties into, I'm gonna blank on his name, but Leia's dad or stepdad.
Bail Organa.
When he's wanting Kenobi to help find her, he even mentions how Kenobi really only watches over Luke and doesn't really pay any attention to Leia. So I mean, he's picking up on that too, that Ben pretty obviously has a favorite of the two.
Yeah. So I think that about wraps up episode 1 in a nutshell. Episode 2 is where some really interesting things get rolling and make us wanting more as the episode comes to a close. So Kenobi does actually agree to go on this mission and save Leia. And he heads to this planet. It's kind of a very underworld type planet. It looks like the underworld of Coruscant, if I were to describe it. It's said to be, if you are on the planet and you become lost, you do not become found. It's a very crime-driven city, so to speak, and it's flooded with bounty hunters, and we'll talk about that in a minute, how we know that. So Kenobi's looking for Leia, asks a couple of people if they've seen his daughter, so he's kind of given this little fake identity to say that he's looking for his daughter, which is interesting because I learned later on that the basically drug dealer that he's talking to is actually Ewan McGregor's daughter, so that's really cool that she got to be inserted into the show. But Kenobi doesn't really get a whole lot of information, but he does come across somebody that says, hey, I know another Jedi, and pulls Kenobi towards seeing this person. And basically, it's a person impersonating a Jedi, trying to, get rid of people's anxieties and tell them, good things are happening. He's kind of like a bogus fortune teller of a Jedi. And Kenobi snuffs it out really quickly. I think it's kind of funny because uh, basically Kenobi says all these things to him that I would imagine, like, if Disney were to make a product of how to use the Force, this is all the stuff that they would be using, like magnets and like sleight of hand and stuff like, stuff that magicians do for their shows. And I thought it was kind of funny how he just kind of exploited all of it. But that doesn't really help him. It is key, though, for later on in the episode, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Kenobi gets away from them and eventually finds the place where Leia is being held. He goes in there, has a little bit of a scuffle with a couple of the grunts, I would call them, and he gets actually pinned down pretty good. But then eventually he escapes and finds Leia. She's a little reluctant to go with him, but eventually she gives in and they take off. They're running through the city streets. Meanwhile, the third sister, which is the person that got all this stuff in motion, she's upset that her grunts didn't do their job. And so she puts out basically a homing signal or a call for a bounty to get Ben Kenobi. So that's how we find out there's so many bounty hunters on the planet, because we see all these different like projections and alarms going off, beeping for them to be aware of, hey, there's a bounty in the area, kind of a thing. So Kenobi and Leia are on the run in the streets. Eventually, we see the Inquisitors trying to interrogate people, trying to find where Kenobi is, and this is actually where that famous scene from the trailer where the Inquisitor has his lightsaber in the dude's face and it's spinning, doing all these cool things. And eventually, Kenobi meets up with the fake Jedi magician dude, and that guy basically tells Kenobi, hey, if you go to this ship with these coordinates, you'll be able to get off the planet, without any issues. Kenobi's kind of like, why are you helping me? And the guy's basically a big fan, loves the Jedi. And Kenobi takes off. The fake Jedi tries to impersonate Kenobi and
Try to buy him some time.
Yeah, to hold off the third sister. But as they're running through the rooftops, we get one little snippet of Kenobi actually tapping into the Force, because Leia falls off the roof and Kenobi has to reach out with the Force and stop her from hitting the ground. I thought was interesting because that's actually something that happened in the Fallen Order video game. It was one of the first times that Cal revealed he was a Jedi, and this was one of the first times that Kenobi was, using his powers again, because he's basically cut himself off. From there, Kenobi and Leia eventually make their way up to the platform that they're supposed to, and this is where things get interesting, okay? So they're on this platform, and there's a couple things that happen here. So the third sister is up there kind of taunting Kenobi. It's almost like a parallel to when Vader was taunting Luke on episode 6 under the stairway, where Vader was basically saying, if you're not going to turn, then maybe your sister will, and it made him go crazy. It was very similar to that, where she was saying, like, Vader's alive, and Kenobi had thought he had killed Anakin, knowing that that's Lord Vader. Yes, he did actually hear Lord Vader, like the name being said to Anakin, so he can make the connection. He thought he was dead, so this is a huge reveal to him, like, oh my God, my, at one point brother is still alive. And then the Grand Inquisitor shows up, and things get even a little more interesting, because he's kind of had enough of the third sister. A handful of the Inquisitors have had enough of her because of her ways that she's doing things. It's interesting because the Empire is trying to look sophisticated, like they're not trying to look like the bad guy, even though they are the bad guy. And I think the Inquisitors kind of have this motive or way about them where they try to, like I said, be sophisticated and not just, people that walk in and kill people, so to speak. And so he's kind of talking to her, saying things like, you have to cool it, you're being a bit much. And she stabs him right in the stomach. And it appears that he falls to the ground and is dead. And I could probably hear the outcry from many other Star Wars fans out there in the world thinking, what just happened? I know one of my buddies said, did you see what Star Wars Theory said when that happened? I said, no. And I watched the video and he was shocked. I did learn from Star Wars Theory that the species that the Grand Inquisitor has two stomachs, and maybe that's how they're going to pull off that he's still alive. So we'll have to see if that's what they end up doing, like rushing him to a Bacta tank or something. But if he is dead, they have ruined some of Star Wars. So we'll have to see how they explain that. The last little piece that we get from this episode is that when Kenobi, is still trying to internalize that Anakin / Lord Vader is alive, we get a cut between Kenobi's eyes and Vader's eyes. And the last thing that we see in this episode is Vader in his Bacta tank with his eyes open. So maybe that's telling us that the next episode is going to be about Vader, which I am all for. I am so ready to see some of that. Did I miss anything big from the second episode, Sarah?
Did you mention that they did escape Reva on the cargo ship?
I didn't. I didn't fully say that, I guess. They did.
No,
they got
Kenobi
away.
and Leia escape Reva from the cargo ship, just barely out of her reach, because she was so distracted with the Grand Inquisitor.
Yeah, because I think she yells out to him like, "You can't escape him, Kenobi." It's that the part from the trailer where she's like has her lightsaber out towards the ship and is screaming at him. And that's how we end the episode. So, a little bit of a discussion stuff here. Sarah, what were your thoughts for the show?
I really like Leia's character. She seems really smart and almost too smart for her own good, almost like she likes to play tricks on her parents because she's tired of being this prim and proper princess, if you will. I like that she's an adventurer. And we see with her back and forth with Kenobi, the whole, do I trust him? Maybe I don't trust him. I do want to get out of here. I can't do it on my own, but he seems kind of scary. Maybe he's lying to me. He lied to me about other things. Maybe he's lying to me about this. It's seeing that inner conflict back and forth. I feel like even just her casting wise, the actress is doing a really good job, which is super cool because, she's a kid. So in terms of things outside of her character, the whole thing with the Inquisitor, I haven't seen Clone Wars, so I don't have that background that Jeremy has in terms of
Rebels.
Oh, Rebels. I'm sorry. I thought it was Clone Wars.
Yeah,
I haven't seen either one.
They weren't a thing until the Empire came into play.
Gotcha. Well, I haven't seen either show, but beside the point. It's on the to-do list. When you see the Grand Inquisitor die, that wasn't something that really struck me as anything out of the ordinary, just because to me, I didn't know he was supposed to die some other time in the timeline. So I almost wonder if that made it more enjoyable of a show for me than it was for Jeremy, because he was so shocked and more than displeased when that happened, without knowing why, right? I know neither one of us are really a big fan of somebody dying and then magically coming back to life later.
Right.
So, I guess that's kind of my thoughts on that. The show as a whole so far, I've been enjoying it. It's it's characters that we know, but in a different light than what we've seen. And so I think that's really cool to have something familiar but still really different.
Yeah, I would agree. Um, some of my first impressions, uh, for one thing, I think the show is done very well. Um, it's, I still have that thing where I know the episodes are only so long, and it's like, please don't be almost over. Please don't be almost over. I want more, kind of a thing. So that's a good thing coming off of this show. Um, like I said, there was a couple of things in the past that I've talked about that I was a little worried about. One of them being the Grand Inquisitor's character. And honestly, I don't know what to believe anymore, simply because the actor at first had said, "Oh, I didn't watch any of Rebels. That way I can kind of do my own thing." And then he was coached by um, Deborah Chow and Dave Filoni on how the Grand Inquisitor is. And then after the show was released, he says, "Oh yeah, I watched a little bit of it." And it's like, which one is it? But after watching the show, I feel like uh, he was probably coached a little more as opposed to that he had seen the episodes. The reason being is because I feel like he looked like he was mimicking what someone told him who it was. I feel like if you've seen somebody, you can mimic them really well, especially if you're an actor. So um, I think that layer is a little bit missing with his character because, I mean, I want more from him, and now I don't know if I'll get more because of what happened.
But you would say that you expected his character to be really menacing, right?
I did.
Because to me, the Inquisitor with the hat, right? He seemed more menacing than the Grand Inquisitor, and I feel like that's backwards. I feel like it should have been the other way around.
Yeah, I think the Grand Inquisitor looks more menacing, but I think the other guy, I think that's the fifth brother. Um, I think that he's acting more menacing, if that makes sense.
He sounds more menacing, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, which I'm actually really proud of him. When I heard about the casting for that character, I was shocked to say the least, just because I didn't really see him as an Inquisitor. It's our guy Han from Fast and the Furious playing this guy. Um, and like I said, I really enjoy him being that character. I can't say it enough. Um, some other impressions from the show. It feels great. I don't really have any complaints so far. I know uh, I've heard a lot of buzz about the third sister and how she's kind of annoying. I would agree with that to a point. Um, but like I said, I kind of think, you know, thinking about Yoda and the Jedi's words about how people act, I think she's going to have something coming for her eventually here, whether it's, from the Jedi or from the Sith themselves. I think, heck, they may even get tired of her and, kill her off. Um, but yeah,
I've actually kind of enjoyed her as a character. I've seen her be bullied by the other Inquisitors, and she might be a little childish and wanting revenge and stuff, but it's kind of the Sith way, right? Is my way or the highway, and everybody's got that same mindset. So,
yeah, so one thing that we haven't talked about yet that I said we were going to talk about, she definitely has something going on with her as opposed to the other Inquisitors. In the beginning, when they show Order 66 and they focus on one of the children, I believe they're focusing on her. Because we know that the Inquisitors were once Jedi that were basically kidnapped and then forced to work for Vader. So I think she's probably one of those Padawans. And with her always going and wanting to get at Kenobi, my guess is that she is upset with him for uh, either not helping Anakin or allowing Anakin to fall. And so to get her revenge, why not be an Inquisitor that's trying to hunt these people, so to speak? So I think we kind of get that connection that she was one of those children in the beginning. Yeah.
An
Uh,
interesting thought.
One other thing that I thought was really interesting, um, it goes to something that I have been worried about for this show when I first heard about it, and now I'm just like, are they sure? Is the rating system. So I had heard that this show was like a rating lower than The Mandalorian. So as far as like the suggested audience, and the I believe it's probably like PG is what they would rank this show. And there was a couple of things that we saw where I was like, Okay, I'm not sure that's PG, but okay." When we saw at one point, I think it was the third sister chopped off a lady's hand, and her hand fell to the ground, and we saw it. It wasn't anything off camera. Um, another
It wasn't bloody because it was done with a lightsaber. So it
correct.
wasn't gory, but it was a hand being chopped off.
Yeah, still dismemberment of a human being. Like it's not just a droid or something. It was a human.
Yeah.
So seeing that was interesting. Like, what boundaries can they push with this PG rating? Um, I feel like when they strung the Jedi up in the streets, they probably did it the way that they did to keep it PG. Because I know when we were watching, you had said something along the lines of like, "I don't think he's dead," and it's like, "Nah, he did."
Well, I mean, you could tell he was dead, but he wasn't hanging by his neck. He was hanging from like under his armpits. I think
Right.
he had a string around his neck too, but he definitely had strings around his armpits, kind of helping hold him up.
Yeah, and this is kind of how the Inquisitors were showing the people of Tatooine, like, hey, if you don't help us, if you don't listen to us, this could be you, kind of a thing. So, um, yeah, it's interesting to see the how graphic they can be without getting into PG-13 territory. It makes me wonder what actually constitutes a PG-13 rating. Um, any other thoughts on the episode so far?
I feel like that about wraps it up pretty good. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so we plan to cover more of Kenobi as they come out. Hopefully we'll have Tony here in the future with us, talking about these episodes. And by the way that you can make sure that you are seeing these episodes when they drop is by turning on your notifications. That way you are notified when these videos drop. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Drop a like if you like this video, and drop us some comments about your thoughts of Kenobi so far. I do not know what days they come out, Wednesdays or Fridays.
I heard it was Wednesdays.
Hopefully it's Wednesdays, so we don't have to wait so long to see episode 3. I know we're very excited to see that. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.